Well, they're the ones who call it Chinese, like fries and beans. Okay, so
Oh, yeah.
yeah, have you ever seen their Chinese stakeout? Okay, we're getting too
Yeah.
old. Hi, welcome to the Couch Coven.
Welcome.
Welcome. This is Teddy.
Oh, I'm Laura. Sorry,
And
we're distracted because we've been chatting for a while before hitting record.
yeah, we didn't have we haven't had a gab session in like a week, so
Yeah.
so we've got a lot to talk about. Anyway, hi, hello. Today we are going to dive into the subject of matriarchies
Matriarchies.
and why they are better, and why we should be living in a matriarchy, and why nature
Mm-hmm.
is mostly matriarchies, and why women are superior to men.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And why women are the backbone of our society, even the most oppressed
Yes.
women. Okie dokie, okie dokie.
I have tarot pulled. I have 4 cards pulled.
Oh, you have pulled. Okay, I've just been
Mhm.
shuffling. I will pull. Hi, we're gonna do our tarot pull now. Before we get even more off track. Teddy is shuffling one more time, and then I'm gonna pull the top and the bottom of my deck because that's what I like to do for these. And oh baby, goddamn, you tell me what you got first.
I got Queen of Pentacles, Knight of Swords. I got 3 of Swords and Queen of Wands.
Okay, the Queen of Wands has been making her way into my readings as well. So hello.
Yeah.
Hello, Miss Matriarch. Honestly, oh god, the Queens of the Tarot are true matriarchs. Listen, Queen of Swords is my favorite. I love her. Queen of Wands, so strong. Anyway, how do you interpret that? Did you ask your deck any specific questions, or did you just kind of do an intuitive poll?
I just asked what my spirit guides want to tell me today. I'm not really sure how to interpret this. I have received Queen of Pentacles, Knight of Swords, and 3 of Swords recently, but Queen of Wands is a new one.
Okay.
I have not received that recently, so I'm going to look that one up because I'm not familiar off the top of my head. Let's see.
Let me tell you what I got to kind of fit
Yes.
into that.
Yeah.
I did not ask. I don't usually ask my deck anything specific. I've been doing this for a while, so I just kind of shuffle and go, "All right, give me what you got." And I pulled the Lovers from the top of my deck, and then the Hermit reversed from the bottom of my deck. So the deck that I'm using is from Pavlov Fyodor. I think that's how you say it. They are a man, so he's a transgender man, and the Lovers card depicts a transgender couple. So it's someone who was male to female and someone who's female to male. And so I don't know, I just love that. I thought it was really cool, and they're, it's typical of a Lovers card. They're bound together. She's holding the apple, he's holding an arrow. There's the little heart. They're in the woods with the trees and all that kind of stuff. And I just thought that was really interesting, especially with your 3 of Swords.
Yeah.
Because that typically depicts some sort of heartbreak or hardship, and the Lover's card is like a union. It's a coming together. It's a relationship, self-discovery. So anyway, that's what I got.
Interesting. Yeah.
And then the Hermit reversed is about kind of coming back out of that solitude and making your way back downtown. Making your way downtown, walking fast, faces past. I'm homebound. Yeah. Oh, never mind. Maybe I'm wrong.
What?
I interpret it as kind of coming out of your shell, but it's my book says it's isolation, loneliness, withdrawal, repeating mistakes, and self-doubt, which actually probably fits in better with our combined reading, because the Lovers upright is about like all that, and then you've got your 3 of Swords, and then your Knight of Swords kind of forging ahead, maybe with too much fire, resulting in potential heartbreak and hardship, and then regrouping back to the Queen of Wands. Losing your grounding, losing your footing, as the Queen of Pentacles may indicate.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was just my rambling. My interpretation.
It's interesting. I get something different from the Queen of Pentacles, and also from yours, from the Hermit. I've interpreted that one both ways that you mentioned, kind of depending on the context, I guess. But I feel for me, the 3 of Swords is always a weird card for me, because I always connect it to romantic heartbreak when I acknowledge that that's not where it lies all the time. And the only thing that I can really think that it relates to in my life, because it's not the first time I've received this card recently, is just processing more familial separation, because that's the only thing that makes sense, because I feel very isolated and severed from pretty much all relationships in my life, like if that makes sense in some sense, most severed from my family. And genuinely each day that goes on, the more I'm like, oh yeah, I can't really have a relationship with those people. But anyway, I do think it might be related to that. And then the Queen of Wands is where I kind of pick myself back up from that heartbreak and that realization and then acknowledging that independence is part of me and part of my growth.
Oh, I love that.
Sorry, what were all your cards that you got?
I just got the Lovers and the Hermit.
That's right, the Lovers and the Hermit. Have you received either of those recently?
No, I have not. I haven't received either of those.
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to say I got Queen of Cups on the bottom of the deck as well. So I got Queen of Cups, Queen of Wands, and Queen of Pentacles.
I was just randomly splitting my deck, and the Queen of Cups reverse kind of came up.
Wow, all like 3 queens came up on the
Yeah.
matriarchal episode. Have fun. Thank you, cards.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. I think that's really cool. I'm going to leave them out. I usually leave them out for the whole episode and then just kind of let them sit. I let them marinate. I like to let my cards marinate. I'll usually do a little spread, look it over, and go sort of wander around and come back to it. And then usually throughout the day, I'll have insights and stuff. So, would you like to start us off with our What is a Matriarchy section? Start us off?
Yes.
It's 11:11 on the clock.
Ooh.
Ah!
A matriarchy, simply put, a system of society or government that is ruled by a woman or group of women. It's morally superior to patriarchy, and I'm not saying that as like a slight on the patriarchy. It genuinely is morally superior because the patriarchy centers men for absolutely no goddamn reason whatsoever, and the matriarchies center children, which is what makes sense, because what the fuck is the point of being a species and perpetuating your species if you don't give a shit about your children, you dumbasses. Sorry, that's how I feel about the current people in power. I'll say this. Of all the intelligent mammals, we are the only ones who are not in a matriarchy. So yeah, we're not very smart. With that being said, there's this incredible article I found on wildlifenomads.com about matriarchal animals in the wild. Some of those include orca whales, dolphins, bonobo monkeys, elephants, ring-tailed lemurs, lions, bees, hyenas, and muskrats. Nope. Meerkats, not muskrats, meerkats. I think a lot of people already knew that elephants were part of a matriarchal society. Their matriarchal leadership is positively correlated to their survival rates, especially during drought periods and scarcity. Elephant matriarchs possess info on water hole locations, safe migration routes, and the patterns of the seasons. Matriarchal females make decisions on movement and resource allocations. Their social bonds span multiple generations, and they pass those bonds down and that social behavior down to their young. It's really cool. It's like they have relationships that span generations because, you know, the matriarchal elephants will be like, okay, baby elephants, these other baby elephants are your friends because their parents are my friends. Like, that's so cute.
Humans do that, which I think is wild. Thinking about talking about how women pass down their experience and their knowledge, except in human society, in the patriarchy, it's typically trauma.
Right.
So, you know, I was thinking about that and I was like, yeah, most of my knowledge and my personality and all that has been passed down through the women in my family. And even though I come from a very matriarchal or matrilineal, that might be a better way to put it, because those two are not necessarily the same. Oh yeah, that happens, except for us it's fucked. Elephants, they also think that humans are cute. Elephants and horses watch humans because they think that they're cute. We're like their little pets.
They think we're cute.
They think we're cute.
That makes me feel good. Bonobos. I was going to move on to bonobos. Bonobos are really cool monkeys, and they're really smart, and we're very closely related to them. And they use cooperation and alliance to keep their males in check because, like humans, their males can get really aggressive, but they keep them in check through bonding rather than through aggression. So instead of, you know, a male is getting aggressive, instead of responding aggressively back and it turning into a fight, they respond with affection and hugs and like calming. So I love that. Males in bonobo societies inherit their rank through their mother, not through strength or fighting. It's through their mother's social status. Coalitions of females control food distribution, group movement, and territory. And their age, their experience, and their social bonds are the leadership qualities of female bonobos. It has nothing to do with their strength. Like I mentioned before, they use affection for conflict resolution. I want to live in a bonobo society, to be fair.
I feel like to be a bonobo would be to evolve instead of devolve. So I will just evolve back into a bonobo because that sounds amazing. That sounds incredible. This is actually making me rethink a lot of things in my life. I have been recontemplating a lot of things in my life because I said, "Oh, maybe I'm not as woke as I thought."
Why? What do you mean? What do you mean?
Specifically about this, talking about how the matriarchal traits of the female bonobos and just the traits that are praised, I guess, and
Mm-hmm.
valued is probably the better word,
Yeah.
better term to put it. I've been focusing so much. I mean, I want to increase my strength and I want to increase my endurance and all that kind of stuff, mostly for the protection of my fellow communities. But I don't know, that just hit me. I'm like, well, is that some other stupid fucking patriarchal bullshit that's been seared into my brain?
Yeah, it is.
And I always have put in so much stock about my physical appearance. And now it's gone from looking as feminine and desirable as I can to looking more masculine
Hmm.
and looking physically like stronger and fit, like bigger muscles, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yep.
And oh God.
Dude, I have struggled with that so hard my whole life, especially growing up in a military family and being expected to be
Ugh.
strong, and how women are, especially in the military and in, male-centered areas of the world, women are looked down upon no matter what. Even if you're strong, they're like, oh, well, still you're a woman. You're still at a disadvantage. You're still not as good as the men. And so I didn't like to be competitive, but I needed to be better than the males. I didn't care what was going on with
Mhm.
the girls. I needed to be better than the boys because I needed to prove to myself and to prove to my dad and my parents and my mom and my brother, these people with all of this military garbage, this poor conditioning. I needed to prove to them that I was just as strong and just as capable as any of them, or if not more. And it has propelled me in so many ways in my life, and I appreciate that. I've had to completely deconstruct that entirely. It has such a crazy effect on my life because, like, I rock climbed for 12 years. And I mean, I still love rock
Mhm.
climbing. I just don't do it as frequently anymore. It was important to me to be able to like knock out crazy amounts of pull ups. Like, it was so important to me to have really incredible
Mhm.
upper body strength, not only for physical things, but also the status of it. Now I'm like in a place where it's such a habit to try to keep up that strength and try to keep up with being able to do what I could physically do before, because it feels like it's a
Mhm.
part of my identity. I have to acknowledge that that's not necessarily healthy for me long term. Like, of course, it's healthy for me to have
Yeah.
muscle mass. Of course, it's healthy for me to stay fit, to make it a part of my identity that I have to have a strong upper body to be comfortable in my
Mhm.
skin is what makes me resentful of all of that conditioning. You know what I mean?
Mhm. Mhm. The bonobos don't believe that. Be like the bonobos.
Their currency is kindness and affection, and that's beautiful.
I love that so much. My currency is affection and kindness. If you're affectionate and kind to me, I will do whatever you want. That's not true.
Almost true.
Anyway, we're just having a good time. We're just gabbing, okay? Listen, you're here for this. This is what it is. Thank you to all our new listeners and the people who have found us on TikTok. I really appreciate you. I appreciate you so much. Kisses.
We love you
Love you
guys.
so
We
much.
love our little couch potatoes.
We love our couch potatoes. Your little tinfoil blanket. Okay. Your little butter hat. Elephants, bonobos, lemurs, hyenas, bees, meerkats. Oh my.
Hyenas. That's the next one I did notes on. Theirs is interesting. So they have one alpha male that rules the whole clan, and that can be up to 80 members. And those 80 members can live.
Sorry, alpha male or
Sorry.
alpha
Oh my
female?
God. Sorry. Isn't that crazy? It's like such a, that connotation is so, yeah, it's so Freudian. The alpha female, there's one alpha female that rules the whole clan, up to 80 members, and those 80 members can live dispersed across miles of territory. The lowest ranking female still outranks the highest ranking male, which I love. Love that.
Get
The
it.
queen maintains order through physical dominance and social alliance, so a little bit of both. Females are roughly 10 to 15% larger than males, and they also have some anatomical adaptations. So I think that's part of why they are in this matriarchy, because they are doing what human men are doing to women, where they're like, well, we're bigger, so we're better. However, I do think that the females are still running this better than the males would. even in
Yeah.
hyenas, personally. Scientists believe, this is really interesting to me. Scientists believe that dominance and mating behavior are affected by females having an elongated clitoris that resembles a penis. This is really interesting to me because I don't know what study they used to find this. I'm also wondering, they have an elongated clitoris compared to what? Because if that's how they're supposed to look, do you mean other species of hyenas, they have a different clitoris? In comparison to whom are these clitorises elongated? If you think that they resemble a penis and that has an effect on the mating, then why, if that has an effect on the mating ritual and effect on dominance behavior, why aren't there more dominant males in the community? Why are males still automatically ranked at the bottom if the
Yeah.
clitoris has something to do with looking like a penis and it having to do with dominance? It doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, I would be very interested to see if there's been any studies on hormone levels, so like how much testosterone the females have versus
Mm.
men, that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
Because honestly, when I read this note, it really just reminds me of when someone who was assigned female at birth goes on testosterone. They have this thing called bottom growth, where that's basically what happens.
Hmm.
Their clitoris
Starts elongating.
enlarges, which I think is absolutely wild
Yeah.
and really cool because that's what happens when you're a fetus, and all fetuses start out as female, and
Hmm.
it's only through specific switches being flipped that they then transition into being quote unquote male. And
Yeah.
that's basically what happens. The ovaries and all the female reproductive organs that are set as the baseline, that are set as the neutral, turn into things like penis and
Turns
testes,
on the penis, turns off the empathy.
especially after they leave the womb.
And also, again, to reiterate, I'm not hating on men, I'm hating on the system. It's not that you guys are born without empathy, it's that you're born into a system that coddles you so that you don't have empathy for anybody but yourself. Just want to clarify.
I am hating on the men. Laura can do whatever they want. I am hating on the men.
I'm saying if you're listening and you have empathy, you're excluded.
Excluded by a small margin.
Excluded by a very small margin it's a razor thin margin and it is very precarious. A few more facts here. Something interesting about ringtail lemurs is the females eat first. They choose mates freely. They are the ones who choose mates. It's not the males.
Yes.
And they also control the territory locations. They use scent markings and aggressive displays, like movement displays, to maintain dominance over males. It says even small females can easily oust larger males through strategic aggression. I would love to know more about that. Even the small females can can get rid of the males. That's so cool. Female ringtail lemurs lead group movements and they make the decisions about foraging locations. There are also social hierarchies. Females are at the top in the social hierarchy, regardless of size or age differences. The females are always at the top. What's really cool about orcas is the grandmothers lead the pods.
Yes.
That's what makes sense about a matriarchy. The whole point is to have the old lady with all the knowledge to be leading the pack. The older females lead complex hunting strategies. They make navigation decisions and they do all of the social teaching to the younger whales. It says research shows that pods with post-reproductive females have significantly higher survival rates. So basically, the pods that have whales that are in menopause that are no longer able to make babies, those ones survive better because they have the better knowledge. They have the better matriarchal knowledge to pass on. So that's really cool, is
Yeah.
that post-reproductive females, their pods survive better than the pods without grandmas. That's so cool.
That is incredible, especially because in our fucking society and the way that humans work, and at least Western society works, is that once you are over the age of 30, and especially if you're menopausal, then you don't fucking matter. When in fact, the women who are
Yeah.
in their 50s and 60s are some of the coolest women I have ever met in my life.
Seriously. And I mean, even us, like as we get older, like I'm 34 now and I'm way
Oh my
cooler than
God,
I ever
yeah.
was when I was younger. I'm way smarter. Last thing about orcas is their bonds with their offspring are lifelong, which is really cool. They raise their babies and then they're just like, all right, you're on your own. But their bonds are lifelong and their leadership transitions from mother to daughter in orcas, maintaining contiguous female guidance. So I loved that. That was really cool. And then obviously with lions, well, it's not obvious to all, I guess, but I've watched so many I've watched so many National Geographic documentaries. Females do the majority of the hunting in lions, which is really cool. And they also do a lot of coordination and strategy. They choose where the pride rests when they move territories. The females collectively raise the cubs together, which is another interesting thing about animal kingdom that is different with humans is, or at least with Western society, that there is no it takes a village. That mentality doesn't exist anymore, which is crazy to me. Oh man, if I didn't have influence from outside of my family, oh God, I would be a trash bag of a human. So I love that, it takes a village. It does. And animals know that. Males are used to defend territory from other males, but without lionesses for them to protect, the pride collapses. There's nothing for them. They're just derelict. Without women, they don't exist, basically. They're just floating nothings. Female lions maintain the stable social bonds that last their entire lives. They create those bonds and rely on them. Their hunting strategies are through female cooperation, communication, and tactical planning exclusively. Bees, obviously, queen bee, through bees, we all know about the queen bee and everybody serves the queen bee, but she is the sole reproductive female for that group of bees, laying up to 1,500 eggs daily. Queen bee is fed royal jelly, as it's known, a nutrient-rich substance produced by worker bees that supports her reproductive functions, which also pays homage to SpongeBob. I don't know if you guys remember, but the jellyfish were very bee-like. They made jelly, and there was like king and queen jellyfish that would consume this jelly. Another thing about bees is male drones exist solely for mating purposes. Then they die after fulfilling their reproductive role. That is so juicy to me. God, I love that.
Scrumptious.
They only exist for sex, the way that male humans have treated women.
But they want to die for it. That's the thing. They say, I'm serving my queen. This place wouldn't survive without the queens. My life is lost in servitude. This great cause.
And my penis.
And my penis
is for the queen.
As it should be.
Female worker bees, they make all the decisions about colony location, food storage, and defense strategies. The colony as a whole, its survival depends entirely on female labor organization, collective decision making. Because again, male drones only exist for sex. So that's pretty cool. In bottlenose dolphins specifically, older females guide pods and make the navigational decisions about where they go and stuff. There's female alliances that form to protect calves and to resist aggression from males through coordinated defense. Communication and cooperation are central to their survival and hunting success, according to the Wildlife Nomads article that I'm reading. Dolphin sounds and communication, they basically have their own language that they can communicate about these things. Females establish long-term relationships that span multiple decades and multiple generations. Pod leadership usually rotates amongst the most experienced females based on the situation and expertise, which is incredible. That is so cool that they can be like, okay, Gloria has more experience in this neck of the woods, so she's going to lead right now. That's so intuitive and amazing that they can think like that. And then lastly, meerkats. Meerkats is the last on the list. Only dominant females reproduce, which I love. That's so cool. Not to say that the less dominant ones don't deserve it, but for the survival of the species as a whole, it makes sense to have the most dominant females reproduce and create more dominant meerkats. It is specifically to actively suppress the fertility of subordinate females. Dominant females lead foraging trips. They make decisions about territory movements. They control activities within the group. Subordinate females, they help raise the alpha pups, reinforcing dominant female genetics, which is confusing to me. The subordinate females can raise the alpha's pups, but they can't have pups of their own. It's so interesting. Alpha females can live longer and reproduce more offspring than subordinate group members. Interesting. I didn't see that note the first time around. I wonder why that is, like what in their genetics causes that. And then lastly, of course, just like the rest of them, the females control territory, resource access, and it's all entirely dependent on the alpha female's decisions.
Wow, I'm sensing a pattern. I am sensing a pattern. Isn't that wild?
It is so crazy that in the animal kingdom, there are multiple intelligent mammals that acknowledge the females should be the ones making decisions on territory, resource allocation, and social hierarchies. And yet, humans somehow didn't make it there.
Makes the most sense because if the females are the ones having the babies and they have to be pregnant with the babies and they have to raise the babies and then they have to make sure that they survive, it makes a lot more sense that they would be in charge of where they live, what kind of food they're getting, the protection that they get. I mean, it just makes more sense. And then we have men taking naps while their wife is in labor. You put that baby in her.
Oh man, there's stories of men like bringing their Xbox and plugging it in the TV and just playing video games the whole time. There's one story of this woman. There's this hospital that gives you 2 fresh baked cookies after you give birth.
Oh my God, I think I saw a TikTok about this.
Yeah. And he ate both of them. I was shocked, especially because she specifically was like, hey, these are both for me. You can have one of them, save one for me. And he ate both of them. What the fuck?
She shouldn't even have to say that.
But they've just been conditioned to believe that they are the center no matter what. And that's insane to me. It would be one thing if we lived under a patriarchy in the sense that, like, male centered only so that they can support women.
That's a matriarchy.
The way that the military is supposed to be viewed when you're in the military is that you're a soldier first, and then whatever your MOS is, that's what you are second. And that's what I would want men to think of themselves is you are a caretaker for women first, and then whatever you want to do with your life is second.
That's what they think is going to happen if women are in power. That's the thing. That's what they think is going to happen. They think it's just going to be a switch and that they will be the oppressed ones. But I'm like, no, you guys are just all submissive and you don't want to admit it.
That's exactly how my last relationship ended. I, in passing, was like, oh, isn't it interesting? All of these animals live in matriarchal societies and they're all intelligent mammals like we are. Wouldn't it be interesting if we turned out like a matriarchy thousands of years ago rather than a patriarchy? It sent him off like I was threatening his life.
Oh my God.
And it's crazy to me because it genuinely, I really truly believe that's what it was. And I think for him in particular, like this partner that I had, he benefited from the patriarchy, but not in the way that other people did because he was a small brown man. And being a small brown man, you don't benefit in the same way. Like you just don't. I thought that that would be a bonding thing. Like, oh, I'm a woman who's oppressed and like you experience oppression in this system as well. Like I thought we would bond on that in some way. No, not at all. He was just like, no, I want to be a tall white man. I want to benefit from this system and I want you to stay oppressed. Like that's how the conversations kind of went. This isn't actually a healthy relationship, it turns out. I know that that was like all just bad conditioning because I know consciously that guy does not want women to suffer the way that they are, but he cannot separate himself from the identity of being a man and that part of his ego so desperately, and that he identifies with, like you said, that idea that the patriarchy is violent towards the groups that don't benefit from the patriarchy. Anyway, so it was just, it's crazy to me that it's like, it's all conditioning. They think that they believe the things that they believe because it's innate. You know, they're just like, no, this is how it's supposed to be. This is how humanity is. It's like, no, honey, that's how you were conditioned to believe.
Then why do you have to fight for it so hard? If you were supposed to be the person in charge, why do you have to oppress women to do it? Why do you have to oppress people to do it if you are the ones who are supposed to be in charge?
Yep, exactly.
God. Let me see. Matrilineal societies. I swear I looked it up and there was something about how matrilineal societies aren't necessarily matriarchal, which kind of makes sense based on the patriarchy in which we live. Matrilineal societies within humans are still pretty cool because power goes from the matriarch, the head woman in the family, you know, grandmother, mother, passes down from female to female, and they hold the main power, basically. They're in charge of whatever estate they might have, they're in charge of household stuff, pretty much like the man would in a patriarchal lineage. But usually better because they actually give a shit about their family. Kind of depends on the influence, though, of patriarchal societies. There are matriarchal societies within humans. Most of these are not in like Northern America, which makes sense, not in European countries, which makes sense because those are all colonized. there is a matrilineal society in Indonesia called the Minangkabau. I had to go to my YouTube how to say because I didn't want to butcher that. This is a matrilineal society in Indonesia. In their culture, young boys' primary responsibility is to his sisters and mother. Traditionally, when women marry, they stay in their familial home and their husband comes only to visit. So not all married couples maintain this living arrangement. That sounds really fun. Sounds like living in Barbie world. Women are the landowners and distributors. They have several cultural celebrations centered around children, such as baby blessings, oh, circumcision, okay,
Yeah.
and adoption ceremonies. Very cute. That sounds lovely. How do I sign up?
This is the one that made me feel like it was more matriarchal leaning than matrilineal
Hmm.
because of everything that was centered around children.
Yeah.
However, the circumcision thing is weird to me. I know people from other countries whose parents have chosen not to circumcise them and then whose
Uh-huh.
parents have chosen to. And there's always like really split ideas about it. I feel maybe we shouldn't be mauling babies, but also I recognize apparently having a foreskin can be really annoying throughout life. And there are a lot of men who are like, I would fucking hate to have that. And so I feel really weird about it. Medically, it's a positive thing for men because
Uh-huh.
foreskins can cause infection and harbor more bacteria. And
It's almost like you have access to soap.
maybe we should give them the choice to do it. And then I've learned from people who got it when they were older that it fucking sucks, that it's absolutely miserable and that you're like bedridden for weeks.
My knowledge of the history of circumcision comes from Christianity. Woo! From what I know of, I'm so sorry, I'm not about to cry. I took a drink of something and now it's like it's giving me a vocal fry.
Circumcisions make you really emotional.
They do. They make me so emotional. I don't give a fuck about them. Okay, I'm going to talk about this thing about religion and then I'm going to bring up the boy without a penis, okay? We're going to come back to that. As far as I know, the tradition among the Israelites was to circumcise their boys, right? So circumcise them at birth. That was a way to distinguish them from not God's people. So, like the pagans and the society outside of that religion.
That's so fucking weird.
Yeah, that definitely, I think, is an influence on it because scientifically, if, in my opinion, as a non scientist, if your body or if all of these bodies are born with a specific part and it doesn't like evolutionarily cause any issues per se, why would we need to mutilate a baby? Why would we need to cut this off of them? That's the biggest thing I can think of because then that tradition continued into the later revisions of the religion and the peoples. I believe it's still a thing. I would assume that in some sects, if you are someone who has not been circumcised and you convert to the religion, then you have to be circumcised, just where you have to go through specific rites of passage in order to be fully in the religion. Like you have to convert. It's not just a welcoming Jesus into your heart type of thing. Here's a Bible, have a good time.
That's the dumbest shit I ever heard.
Yeah, I know.
You got to cut your penis sleeve off to prove yourself to God and to distinct you from non godly people. Who the fuck is whipping their penis out and being like, I'm one of God's? Like, what the fuck is this?
The other part to that is a lot of the Old Testament rules around food. If you've heard the term kosher, food being kosher, so not eating pork, not eating seafood, keeping everything very separate. It has to do with cleanliness, and especially back in like the
Mm,
Bible days, pork was not sanitary. The seafood, not
right.
sanitary. Like it could make you very sick. It was not a safe food to eat. Now it's a little bit different depending on who you ask. It could also be part of that, especially if, the foreskin does harbor bacteria and could potentially have some sort of negative effect on the baby's health, on the person's health. I could see that being part of it.
Not only their own health, but their health of their partner later on as well. And that's what it is now, as far as I understand. Like why it's
Yeah.
like a common practice in the medical field and not religious based at all, because they're like, oh, we'll just get rid of this because it only causes problems, even though it may not cause problems.
That's what I would be curious to look into because I've never actually looked into that because it's just such a common practice.
Your parents have to consent to it, of course, but there's like a huge following of men who are like, I never agreed to be mutilated as a baby. Yeah, you didn't.
You didn't, so I don't necessarily agree with the circumcision thing. The other part of circumcision that scares the shit out of me is let me get his name because this is important to me.
Oh yeah, the boy with no penis. Yeah.
David Reimer. Okay, that's what his name was. He was a boy raised as a girl following medical advice and intervention after his penis was severely injured during a botched circumcision in infancy. From what I can remember, it was a new procedure that used cauterization to cut off the foreskin.
2 twin boys, Brian and Bruce. Bruce was castrated, and a rudimentary vulva was created for him, and they called him Brenda and tried to treat him like a girl. That's fucking insane.
They were twin boys. Both of them were circumcised. One was successful. The other one, his penis was mutilated and turned into. They basically gave him gender reassignment surgery. That's basically what they did. This child psychologist told the parents they should raise their son as a girl because gender isn't formed until they're about 3 years old. Really weird psychology, incredibly unethical. This doctor definitely sexually assaulted these kids, like abused them. It was not okay. And finally, the boy's father finally told him what happened. You're not a girl. This is what happened. Because this kid is growing up their entire life just not fucking understanding it. And it's not like he was struggling with his gender identity in terms of how, like, someone who believes that they're cis would be. Like, there was no hormone therapy. There was no nothing. It was just, oh, you're a girl. The parents, unfortunately, were just incredibly uneducated and they didn't know what to do. They were just trying to follow the advice
Yeah.
of this doctor that was like, I know what's best for your kids. Whenever people bring up circumcision, I think about this guy. He did end up getting phalloplasty and having a wife and a couple of kids, I think.
She had 3 kids from a previous marriage, and that's how he ended up with children. They weren't his own.
He did end up completing suicide. There's no way to get over that.
It says his brother may have committed suicide for the drug overdose.
So whenever I think about circumcision, I think about this man and how nuts it is. Again, I don't know the science behind it. I think there's a whole part of it that's probably due to colonization, shame around bodies and in groups and out groups and religious groups versus non-religious groups and everything like that that goes into it. There's definitely an element of white supremacy, obviously. Where is that? I haven't dug into that yet. It's really easy to smell on this one. I had to take us on that track because I think about that man a lot.
Thank you for that.
I think it's probably like the number one most unethical psychological study or experiment or whatever you call if you look up one of those lists.
Yeah, that's pretty brutal. That should never have happened. I completely agree. Circumcisions on babies, very controversial. I don't think it's right just because it's mutilating. However, it should be an easy procedure, and that should never have fucking happened.
They like cauterized it off. They were trying to do something different, and then they were just like,
Yeah, they tried to burn it off. All right, circumcision. Back to matriarchies.
don't maim your babies. Give them cute little hairdos in the bath with the bubbles. Don't mutilate them. The Khasi people are an Austro-Asiatic ethnic group of Meghalaya in northeastern India, in Assam, and parts of Bangladesh. Okay.
Beautiful.
Yay! Okay, I worked so hard. They make up 48% of Meghalaya, making them its largest ethnic community. This community has been granted the status of scheduled tribe under the Indian Constitution, meaning they are an officially designated group and are among the most disadvantaged. Boo! Khasi mythology suggests that trees are our link to divinity, and destroying trees and nature means severing our ties to the divine. While the Khasi people technically have arranged marriages, they aren't as expected. Both parties still have choice in the matter. Traditionally, a man will tell his clan about a woman he is interested in. They will go to her and her family and ask whether or not she is interested, and also determine if she is related or from the same clan, which is not allowed. Divorce is relatively common. Women own property. The youngest daughter inherits the family home. This is where her and her husband will reside upon marriage. Should she die without children, traditionally her husband must return to his maternal home. Yes, kick him to the curb. Kick him out of there.
And divorce is common just in the sense that, like, it's not shamed. People are allowed to separate.
So that's what we got for some matriarchal societies that exist currently today. Main themes are women are equal human beings. They own property.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
are
And
give consent.
And it seems like that a lot of these matrilineal societies where women do own property and power is transferred through women, there's a lot less civil unrest amongst the people.
Yeah.
Everything's just real chill. The women are in charge of the land and and things like that. And so it's like they're handling things a little more rationally. They're not worried about throwing their power and their weight around.
They're not as emotional, you could say,
Yeah.
as men. Because anger's an emotion, everybody. And if you're getting angry because you don't get your way, that's emotion. I like that they are very connected to trees and nature. I really love that.
Yeah.
I think that that's very
Yeah.
representative of the ties we all have to each other in community and the way that we support and ground
And our connection to nature as well. It's all one organism. We all work together as a people and the earth. Did you want to go into divine feminine erasure?
I can. I don't have a ton, but I have a little bit.
Okay.
As someone who grew up in church, yes, we've all heard this already. If you're new, I grew up in church, the Christian church.
I grew up in a bar.
I grew up in a weird sex cult, which is basically the same thing as the evangelical church.
Good God.
There is in a lot of religions divine feminine, right? Especially Eastern religions. There are goddesses, there are female entities, there are maternal entities, the yin and the yang of it all, you could say. The modern Bible, the Christian Bible as you have it, has been translated, retranslated, etc., by men specifically, for the profit of men specifically. One of the entities that was basically completely erased from anything that has to do with the Bible is Asherah. So Asherah is a fertility and earth mother goddess figure from the Canaanite pantheon, which is where Yahweh, the God of the Christian Bible, comes from as well. She was known as his queen consort, as his wife. There's depictions and statues of what people assume is her all over. Um, Statues and shrines is the word I'm looking for. Statues, shrines have been found for Asherah. Typically, they have something to do with Yahweh as well because they were a pair. They went hand in
Mm-hmm.
hand with each other. She is mentioned in the Old Testament of the Bible, only referring to something that has to do with nature, not as the goddess that she is. The first Temple of Solomon featured both the divine feminine and the divine masculine, so both depictions of the goddess and god. A sect of religious extremists destroyed said temple and erased everything that had to do with the divine feminine. Not to say that the religion at the time or the religion of the land was necessarily matriarchal, there was still an emphasis on the divine feminine. The original language of the Bible, the Holy Spirit, instead of being the Holy Ghost, instead of being a male presence, it's like the other half of God, basically, and it's the divine feminine. It's spoken with feminine terms. There really is just a strong erasure of women and of femininity and of divine feminine in the Western Bible, which leads us to modern day, where we have this incredibly patriarchal religion that oppresses women, when that wasn't the case at the beginning. Like, if Adam and Eve were created in God's image and they are meant to be equal to each other, there shouldn't be this oppression. But men aren't okay with that. Colonization is also a huge part of this because, the Roman Catholics really said convert or die. Yahweh, the God of the Bible, was used as motivation to kill and plunder due to the quote unquote sinful nature of the people who already existed in the areas being raided. Woohoo to the Crusades. It was convert or die. It's all just thanks to colonization. A long time of killing, and for some reason, it made sense. I actually thought it was really funny because I was doing research into matriarchal societies, obviously. I was reading articles talking about how matriarchal societies, like, there's no real proof of them ever having existed in humans. That made me scratch my head. That made me go, what are we talking about? To look deeper into that, to understand what the fuck they're actually talking about, because I know that can't be true.
I think quite literally all of the historical pieces of matriarchal societies were quite literally just destroyed.
History is written by the oppressors, rewritten to favor the winners. So yeah, it doesn't
Right.
exist because you fucking
Right.
burned everything up. The people who won and want to oppress aren't going to keep record of matriarchal societies because it would give another reason to defy them and to go back to something that actually works, because then it strips them of their power. My next note is I want to hit my head on a rock. It makes me so upset that even in some matrilineal societies, or I come from a line of, I would say, somewhat matriarchal. My grandfather's mother was, so my great grandmother on his side was definitely like the matriarch of the family. She controlled like the finances, she made all of the property decisions. She was incredibly financially literate. She taught him, my grandfather, about money and investing and all that kind of stuff. But I think now that I'm thinking about it, my grandmother's side, she came from the lineage of strong women, but then her dad really fucked that all up because he was a piece of shit. Also grew up in a Catholic family, so like religion plays into it quite a bit. That's the thing. That's the thing. It all has to do with generational trauma and patriarchal conditioning, and it makes me so upset because I see such strength in these women in my family and just envision the lives that they could lead if they were given the chance or were comfortable being uncomfortable and deconstructing and really looking at life and recognizing that even though undoing your patriarchal conditioning is incredibly scary and it shows you how in danger you truly are and how oppressed you truly are, through that we could actually change things. Like, it's scary knowing that you don't have the protection that you think that you have because you've been convinced, because you're white, you're a woman who is doing everything that she's supposed to do and fulfilling her gender roles, etc., especially in a religious context, that you're protected when you're really not. It makes me so upset. It genuinely breaks my heart.
Me too. Something that I didn't write notes down for that I think we should talk about. It would behoove us to end the episode with talking about how we think we can move away from that. All we can really do is try to inform people who are still indoctrinated and try to help them see things can be different as a society and try to move in the right direction as a whole. But it's really hard to get people to separate themselves from their conditioning. How do you think we go about doing that?
My strategy to tackle this is honestly to forget that it's something that I'm trying to do and instead is something that I am becoming the embodiment of, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
I had my sisters in town recently, and I didn't even stop to think about whether or not my opinions would offend them, especially when it came to patriarchy or oppression or anything like that. Like, I've stopped speaking for shock value. I've stopped speaking to try and get a
Hmm.
rise out of people. I am just speaking, taking up space.
Yeah.
I'm giving you my opinions, operating in an air of authenticity that I wasn't before, and that's because I no longer see the world through this lens of, oh my God, if the patriarchy doesn't love me, then I'm worthless. I've embodied my own worth and my inherent value, and I think that speaks to itself, not to stroke my own ego. And that's how I feel, and that's what I've tried to do, because I can't change anybody else without starting with myself first. And I found that the more I focus on myself and the more I focus on my own growth, becoming more open minded, working through my trauma, and deconstructing all of my conditioning, that radiates to the people around me. By being in the room, I have an impact. And I love that. I think it also comes from my Christian upbringing, where it was always, oh, you have to witness to people, you have to convert people, you have to tell people about the good news. I'm not trying to get someone to confess their deepest, darkest secrets. I'm not trying to get someone to admit that they're scum of the earth. I'm just going to be who I am. I'm going to talk about what I want to talk about. And if you want to ask questions, if you want to talk, if you want to change your mind, that's great. But I'm not going to act like I'm holier than thou or sit down and constantly preach to you about all of this for the sake of changing your mind. I'm just going to talk to you about it because
Right.
I'm passionate about it. And yes, if your wife is super upset at the people in your local government who are super MAGA and you roll your eyes at it, I'm gonna fucking call you out, because that's bullshit. Because what do you mean you're exasperated at your wife for being so fucking mad these people are actively taking away her rights? I'm not gonna sit there and listen to you dog your wife. For what reason? By sticking up for women, you stick up for the community. They're the backbone of our fucking society, whether or not they're allowed space. They fucking are. They carry humanity. I hope that was cohesive. What about you? Is there anything specific that you're doing, or anything that you have tried, or what do you tell me about?
It's kind of like mixing what you're doing, just being very unapologetically yourself and not curbing your opinions with people who you know might not agree. Also, like kind of mixing it with a little bit of gray rocking,
I love that.
where I am unapologetically myself and like say what I believe, but I say it in a way that is so matter of fact that it's not combative. Well, I believe this because it's logical. It's just very short, this is what actually makes sense to me or whatever. Having it be nonchalant and almost like, huh, what a weird way to think. I think like this because it's normal and sound or whatever, like where it just feels very like curt, but also not combative. I've found even if it doesn't necessarily cause any further conversation, oftentimes responding like that, unless people get up in their egos about it, will just be like, huh, go on about their way. Because people don't like confrontation as it is. But I like to think those moments at least make people mull things over when they walk away. Like, that does feel more logical than what I said. All I ever want to do is make people think differently, like just change their perspective a little bit so that maybe they stop having bigoted views. It's really important that a lot of people feel like there's so much that needs to change and there's so little that we can do individually. And it really has to be in your own interpersonal relationships. Like,
Yes.
that's where the changes have to be in the connections that you make with people in your life, people you encounter in your society and stuff like that. Even when we go to protests, those are awesome and everything. The changes that we can make on our own as an individual are with interpersonal connections that we have. There are lots of things that we can try to do collectively to like change as a group, but what we need to do on our own individually is just be unapologetically ourselves and keep moving forward in the right direction. Hopefully people will start to see that and be like, yeah, I'm on that path too.
Yes, absolutely. I agree. I agree.
I know we're both out of energy on this, and I think we're at a good stopping point. So do
Yeah.
you have a blessing you want to give, or you would like?
I don't know if this is a blessing or an intention, but I want everyone, especially women, non binary people, anybody who is not a cis man and has had to stand up for themselves and constantly second guess themselves because they're always being told that they're wrong, have the confidence and faith to look somebody in the eye and tell them that you're right when you know you're right. Don't second guess yourself. Don't back down. At work one time there was this guy who was trying to, I don't know, he was trying to tell me that patriarchy didn't exist. Like, I was explaining it to him right there live, like he was learning about it live. It was really fucking weird. And he was saying something, and he was like, well, I don't, we don't have to talk about this, I don't want to piss you off. And I looked at him and I was like, I'm not gonna get pissed off, I just know I'm right. And it just shut him the fuck down, and it was really funny.
I just think that's so funny about people in those situations where they're like, oh, don't be upset about it because you're responding with some form of confrontation in their mind. It's like, oh, I'm not upset. I'm just combating you because I know that I'm right. I'm not combating you from emotion. I'm combating you from logic, my friend. And you just don't understand that because you do everything from anger.
Because he asked me if I was like a true crime girly or whatever, if I listened to it. And I was like, yeah, I used to. But then I just got tired of listening to men commit violent crimes against women because they hated their mothers and they're just fucking upset. It's the same thing over and over and over. There's some, even if they're killing men instead of women, it still has something to do with patriarchy and misogyny. Violence against men is still misogynistic in some sense of the word, okay? Don't fucking get me started on that.
Yeah, it gets exhaustive.
If you know you're right,
Yeah.
you don't have to second guess that. And if you don't want to start a conversation, if you don't want to be in an argument, gray rock them. Just say, okay, uh-huh, huh, okay. Okay is an acceptable answer to whatever anybody says if you don't want to start a conversation. Anyway, that's really kind of the only blessing I've got, because I know that I self-gaslight. It's only been over the past probably 6 months that I've really stopped. That little neural pathway has started to change into something different, and I've made new connections. Because, yeah, I don't second guess what I'm about to say before I say it, because I know that I'm speaking from my heart. My heart. What actually cracks me up about this old coworker is that I got the sense that he desperately wanted my approval and my attention. He was so easy to wipe the floor with. He had so much confidence, unbridled confidence, cemented in nothing. He'd obviously never met any resistance from anybody in his entire life. Here comes me, just wiping the fucking floor with him. Anyway, we're both already brain dead, and I appreciate everybody for tuning in. If you are feeling low energy, thanks for joining us and hanging out. I hope that you got cozy or got some cleaning done or got to home on time. I don't know. Have a good day, couch potatoes.
Yeah, love you guys.
I'm gonna go be a couch potato. Love you,
Bye.
bye.